Right breathing. Springtime had now come. Nature had awakened, and her essence flowed freely. The Master used every opportunity to guide us into her realm. He introduced us to the methods for mindful living that give man the opportunity of making use of nature's bounties and communing with her. The following law applies to her. The more that one's consciousness is awakened and enlightened, the greater will be the bounties that nature will provide. One morning the Master discussed the concept of right breathing. The air is the most fundamental element of life that we need to study under the present conditions. Each and every one of us needs to comprehend those laws that the air obeys. Right breathing is understood to mean the complete drawing in of the energy that is present in the air. If I can accomplish this, I will have accomplished a certain task, and I will rejoice. During breathing, one needs to observe the following law. Love the air and receive it with joy. This is the only way in which we can receive those blessings that the air provides. When you exhale, no air should remain in the lungs. The cause of many diseases is the result of leaving considerable quantities of air in the lungs during exhalation. Shallow breathing shortens one's life. If you were to breathe more deeply, your life would be prolonged. When a person's respiration is rapid, he will die sooner than he would if it were slow. The one who is ill with tuberculosis will have 20 to 25 respirations per minute. The healthy person should have 3 respirations per minute. And there are those whose respiratory cycle has only 1 respiration per minute. And then there are those adepts who have only 1 respiration for every 20-minute period, and others 1 for every hour. The one who desires patience should breathe deeply. The longer that a person is able to hold his breath, the greater his patience will be. Through right breathing, a person can rid himself of any morbid condition, physical or mental, gradually bringing balance into his life force and at the same time becoming revitalized. Once he has achieved internal balance, no external condition, no external influence can deviate him from his path. In addition to oxygen, man also receives life force, prana, through right breathing, and new ideas as well. This can be achieved by following certain guidelines. I recommend deep breathing to you. Direct your consciousness to God and begin breathing rhythmically. As you inhale and exhale, repeat a mantra or a prayer in your mind. This will increase your ability to receive more of the sublime forces hidden within the air. You should have gratitude toward God. The air has been provided by Him. It is required that God enters into you continuously and that you enter continuously into Him. When I inhale, God reveals Himself to me, and when I exhale, I reveal myself to Him. The air is a transmitter of divine thought that penetrates first the respiratory system and then the brain. This means that man does not receive divine thought directly, but through the air. The air is the fundamental transmitter of divine thought. I speak of the air's real essence, and not of what the chemists analyze as a mixture of 4/5 oxygen and 1/5 nitrogen. The air is the primordial element that serves man as the origin of his life force. When a person breathes, his consciousness needs to be vigilant, because thought, after it has been received from the air, is received by the consciousness. As vigilant as your consciousness is, that much will you be blessed with the life force within the air. In this way, you will be connected with the sentient beings who you will be helping and who will be helping you. As soon as spring comes, go out each morning for a walk in the fresh air, away from the soot of the city, and devote at least 1 hour to right breathing and exercise. If you take these walks, your affairs will be in better order than had you stayed in your room. Many methods of breathing exist. It is best done through both nostrils simultaneously, but it can also be done through one nostril at a time. I will give you an exercise. Inhale for 15 seconds through the left nostril. Hold the air for 40 seconds. Then exhale through the right nostril for 15 seconds. When you inhale through the left nostril, the right should be closed and vice versa. While you are holding the air, both nostrils should be closed. Then inhale through the right nostril and exhale through the left. If you desire to become a poet, breathe. Real poetry is dependent upon right breathing. As you breathe, so will you write. The music of the future culture. This afternoon we spent a few hours filled with music. We sang many songs, and after that the conversation was naturally about music. The Master said, "Music began very well at the beginning of the involutionary epoch. However, as it gradually descended into matter, the music increasingly lost its depth. What man had in the world beyond has become lost to him. With the music of the evolutionary epoch, man needs to restore what he has lost." In their error, people lost their primordial musical life. The music of the East descends. It is of the involutionary epoch. In contrast, the music of the West ascends because it is of the evolutionary. Today, an uplift from music is coming. The impulse is an upward one from a denser substance to a lighter one. With the descent of music from the lighter substance into a denser one, the tones are of one kind, and with the ascent of music from the denser substance into a lighter one, the tones are of another kind. In other words, the music of an evolutionary epoch is different from that of the involutionary epoch. In its descent, the music of the East moves from a comprehensible melody toward an incomprehensible one. In contrast, in its ascent, the music of the West progresses from an incomprehensible melody toward a comprehensible one. Our departure from God is in the minor scale, whereas our return to Him is in the major one. In the first case, there is something soft in the voice. There is sorrow and lament in the content. In the music of the East, the melody dominates, whereas in the music of the West, it is the harmony. The music of the East is the music of the emotions, whereas the music of the West is of the mind and will. I divide music into the following categories: that of the frigid zone, that of the temperate zone, and that of the torrid zone. Slavic music belongs to the temperate zone. At the sunset of one culture and the sunrise of another, the music will always be different. Today, something new needs to be introduced into music. It is no longer possible for man to sing as he did 2,000 years ago. So how should people sing now? The new music needs to serve as an improvement to what has been accomplished up to now. If we do not add something new to the music of today, what good would it serve? All musicians and singers will be inspired in the future. Their music will be capable of causing total transformation in the souls who have fallen, and will awaken the impulse for science in those who have never desired to study it. The harmony of contemporary music is a manifestation of the entire modern culture. Its optimism, pessimism, materialism, skepticism, and so on. A new music is coming. From now on, music will begin to evolve. The entire development of music to the present has only been an introduction. The culture of the future will be created through music alone. Those beings who have manifest themselves through the music of Beethoven, Bach, Mozart, and others will once again give the world something new and more sublime than has ever been given before. At present, the conditions do not exist for the sublime music to manifest. It is not easy for a man of genius to incarnate. For this to occur, he should have a perfectly structured body in order to withstand the enormous stress of those forces that will manifest through him. Music fulfills its purpose only when it serves the uplift of humankind. Man needs to move from the extrinsic music toward the music of cosmic consciousness. The person who has not developed his ear for the music of cosmic consciousness cannot enter into the divine world. Today, God breathes the breath of life into our ears, and for this reason, all people should learn to sing. With the events of today, there will be a greater understanding of music's significance. The impulse to sing will grow stronger. Throughout the war, cruelty has increased and people have hardened. At present, we can hear the harsh sounds of machine guns, cannons, bombs, and more. These are the harshest of sounds. Music descends from the invisible world to help humankind. In the future, people will be born with a developed gift for music. In the past, music as we know it did not exist. In the music of the people of Spanish heritage, the feminine principle is expressed, whereas in that of the Anglo-Saxon, the masculine principle is expressed. In the music of the Slavic race, the feminine principle is expressed once again, but to a greater extent. The Slavic people have a good ear for music. Because they have experienced a great deal of oppression in the past, their suffering is expressed in their songs. However, they have accepted their fate in good faith and are now on the upward path. Whenever one sings the songs of a particular culture, one should have an understanding of the epoch in which those songs came into being. The Russians, as well as the Bulgarian people, have endured great suffering, and this is reflected in many of their songs. The epoch of a new music is approaching. The Slavic people will give a new impulse to music. They provide the good clay out of which better pots will be formed. The sacred name. The Master said, "Sacred is the name of God." Absolute silence should instantly arise within the hearts and souls of all whenever the name is spoken. All should be filled with reverence and sacred awe. Everything in the world, except for the name of God and the will of God, is transitory. The name of God should be held sacred within your souls. Remember always the blessings that God has bestowed upon you. In prosperity and in impoverishment, in health and in sickness, in favorable times and in adversity, He always watches over you. The one who does not fulfill God's will is sure to suffer, not because God desires this, but because he has erred against the most fundamental law of life. The one who abides by His will is like iron that has been heated until it glows white. At this temperature, all misconceptions, adversity, and disease will be burned to ashes. Only then will man begin to feel peace and tranquility deep within himself. The mere mention of God's love, of the name of God, will inspire man. All irreverence will immediately cease. Sacred is the name of God. Sacred is the name of the angels. Man needs to nurture these sacred thoughts and feelings about God. Sleep as a process for renewal. This evening, the concept of sleep as a process for renewal was discussed. The Master said, "At night you go to bed, you leave your body. You feel as if you move, but your body remains motionless. Your body has one consciousness and you have another. You move, but you are afraid that the connection with your body might be broken, and you return. You cannot tell your ordinary consciousness about what is immeasurable or what you have experienced in the higher realm. The ordinary consciousness tells you, go, go, but not too far away. In the evening, because the right conditions for work do not exist here, we leave our bodies and go somewhere else to work. Meanwhile, others work on our bodies. Nature is like a prudent mother. When people sleep, she cleans the house, the body, and renews it, so that upon awakening we can continue our work. During the time of sleep, the soul leaves the body. During this time, the sentient beings set to work on the body's cells to renew them and restore the disrupted rhythm. When a person goes to bed, he should pray that the body be protected and shielded from negative influences during his time of sleep. Negative, morbid states can pass from one person to another. This happens especially during the time of sleep. Man needs to observe the law of psychic protection. In other words, when a person goes to bed in the evening, he needs to protect his body. On the other hand, be thankful to your sentient friends who protect your bodies when you are separated from them during your time of sleep. Otherwise, you could find your bodies possessed and violated. Sometimes you cannot sleep well because of being overtired, having used excessive energy to accomplish an insignificant task. This is as if you wanted to drive a small nail into a wall by pounding it with great force. Put in other words, you worry too much over small things. Was it necessary to use so much force for such a small nail? Not much sleep is needed to be truly rested. Before going to bed, a person needs to rid himself of all painful moments and negative conditions he has experienced during the day. Your mind and heart need to be emptied of all conflicts. If the body, mind, and heart of a person are not at rest when he falls asleep, he will stray into the astral world and will not find the divine school where the laws of that world are studied. When he awakens, he is dissatisfied. He has understood nothing. Man learns also when he is asleep. When a person suffers from insomnia, he should rise from his bed, rub his body with a cloth and warm water, wash his feet in warm water, and return to bed. His sleep will then be refreshing. One peculiarity of the astral world is that events are experienced there in symbols, in images. For this reason, some dreams are symbolic. You dream that you have entered a house and are being chased out. You enter another house. You are chased out again. The house represents the body. During sleep, you enter someone's body thinking that it belongs to you, but it is not yours, and you depart. You enter another body thinking it is yours. Again you leave, and so on. When a person sleeps, the bond between his spiritual and physical bodies remains. When a person returns to his body unexpectedly, when frightened, for example, it is possible for it to become entangled with the etheric double of another person. In order to have a genuine encounter with someone in the higher realm during the time of sleep, one needs to have the purest and best thoughts about him. If you occupy your mind with his shortcomings, you will not be able to meet him. The Mystical Circle. It was early spring. The day was clear and calm. The sun was melting the snow, and the waters rushed down into the valley from above. Life was increasing its flow with a renewed rhythm. We were in the mountains with our beloved Master. 3 colors combined harmoniously: the white of the snowdrifts, the blue of the sky, and the new green of spring. The breath of the Eternal One enlivened everything. The Master said, "Think of him who has given you everything, and whom you have not yet come to know. You should come to know the absolute reality, the one who was the first to give his love to us." A deep understanding of a person's inner life is required so that he may bring his human aspirations to right realization. When one does not perceive the divine within, his most beautiful aspirations will vanish. In such a case, he has no pillar of support within himself. Every thought about God, as small as it might be, is like a spark. Every thought about God will bring you a blessing. Direct your minds toward God, and the natural state of your being will be restored. A law states, the moment you make a connection with God, you will receive His ideas. For as long as people maintain this connection with the omniscient center of creation, they will be the bearers of divine ideas. Another law states, whenever you think about God, a powerful flow of energy will pass through you. You will receive the power of the divine, and all of your gifts and capabilities will develop rightly. Whenever you think about God, divine power and thought will permeate and restructure you. It is the same relationship as that of the mountain peak to the valley. When the snow melts on the mountain peak, the waters rush down, and everything in the valley begins to bloom and bear fruit. When man holds a sacred thought about the Great One within his consciousness, he will have light within his mind and warmth within his heart. Man needs to understand this thought to be both fundamental and sacred. He needs to build upon it. Now your thoughts are scattered. They resemble disconnected chain links. And yet, when a thought about God arises, it connects all of the links and makes a chain. The law states, let the chain not be broken, so that the divine flow of life will not be interrupted. This divine flow should never be broken. All are now in need of the power that sustains life, the life force that emanates from the divine. All are in need of the life force that proceeds from God's joy. Man needs to connect with God, that is to say, with the great potentiality of the living cosmos. Only then will he attain the light that bears all favorable conditions for the development of the mind, heart, and will. This is the only way in which man is able to build up his life and organize his life force. The one who strives to create his character anew and attain an enlightened consciousness needs to connect with the great sentient world. When man connects with God, his sky will become cloudless. Strive to restore this living connection. Man will attain great knowledge when he is able to maintain this connection. Should he lack this connection with God, with his teacher, he will attain nothing. The mind is a mystical wand. Use it to draw a mystical circle around yourself that you may be protected. How will you do this? Only by thinking about God is the mystical circle drawn. When a person is connected with God, he is protected. Wherever he may be, he will be safe. When he is not connected with God, everywhere holds danger for him. When I encounter a bear, I say, God dwells within this bear. Then the bear has no desire to cause me harm. I encounter a thief, the same. How will the new be different? In its connection with the divine. A law states, all error will be atoned for when the connection between the human soul and God is restored. This is the law of the universal brotherhood of light. This connection has not yet been restored. Open the way for the divine to enter into you, that you may have peace. Because you do not presently have a connection with the advanced brothers, with the sublime world, your spiritual forces are in a dormant state. The forces that emanate from the sublime worlds remain in your lower nature without manifesting. When you connect with God, right use is made of these forces, and contradictions are easily resolved. Another law states, whenever a person connects with God, he becomes reconciled with God. God's blessings will then manifest in such a way that he will reconcile with all his enemies. Whatever might happen in the world, maintain your connection with the great origin of life and be not afraid. Whatever thought you hold about God, so will you become as well. When you begin to doubt God, all gifts that have been imparted to you will be lost. Even when you are in the midst of the greatest hardship, remember that God remains unchangeable. Should you feel God's presence, even for a moment, all your adversities will melt away as the ice does. If you have faith in God, even the hell in which you live will be transformed into a paradise. This is a great truth. During times of hardship, man needs to depend upon God. To do this, man needs to be strong. Should your home burn down, or should any other hardship come into your life, if this is capable of breaking your connection with the great center of creation, then you are not a person of the conscious life. If a thought is not applied, its form will be destroyed, but the thought itself remains as a living essence, returning to God. It becomes lost to you as if you had lost your children. Should a person lose the connection with his sacred thoughts, feelings, and desires, he interrupts his connection with all sentient beings. A person's sacred thoughts are the substance through which he comes in contact with the great sentient world. Should he destroy his sacred thoughts and feelings about God, along with this, he will destroy the most precious part of himself. It is only through these sacred thoughts and feelings that he may enter into communion with him. When man keeps sacred his thoughts and feelings about God, he will be a citizen in the kingdom of God. All of man's thoughts and feelings are born out of the sacred. When we do not live rightly, this is of concern to God. He wants that all error be atoned for. When we abide in God, we become channels of His blessing. God desires the blessing that proceeds from Him to be passed along. God desires that His blessing be made manifest. One thing is required of man, to have veneration for God. All things that come from God are made available to man when he is connected with Him. When this connection is missing, he will remain an ordinary human being. Nothing will become of him. When one comes to know God, the conditions of his life will improve. Otherwise, they will worsen. I have tested and verified this, and I pass it on to you. When a person is connected with God, this will enable him to understand the material existence, to rid himself of error, and attain his ideal. In reality, even the one whose error is the greatest remains connected with God. At times, however, it would appear that he is not. In such a case, God loosens the bond, and the person moves further away from Him. Some time later, this person will again have the desire to draw closer to God. God will then wind up the thread on the spool, and the person will be drawn to Him. I speak figuratively, of course. This connection is never interrupted. The concept of God is the most powerful concept in man. However, its manifestation is at its weakest right now. Not that it is truly weak, but it awaits for the right time to come for it. The qualities of divine love. The Easter holiday made it possible for many disciples to come and see the Master. Spring had come. The blossoms of the trees filled the air with a heavenly fragrance. The first birds of spring had arrived. The small community was filled with life. One could see disciples everywhere, standing both in groups and alone. Some of them worked, others read, and still others were conversing with one another. Everyone had something he wished to share with his neighbors. Early in the morning, we climbed to the hill above the village with the Master, where we performed calisthenic exercises and panurhythmy. After that, we returned to the homestead, refreshed and invigorated. We took our meals beneath the big walnut tree. It was warm, and the rays of the sun filtered through the young green of the branches, making them look as if they were made of gold. The conversations were lively. The influx of life was felt not only in nature, but also in the souls, minds, and hearts of all people, as if the seeds of a new life were sprouting. The Master said, "Read page 100 from the volume, The Eternal Blessing." At this point there's a footnote. The Eternal Blessing, Vechnoto Blago, collection of lectures given by the Master, published in 1943, Sofia. End of footnote. A person with ordinary comprehension cannot manifest divine love. Only if an advanced being comes to dwell within someone, be it for merely an instant, can one manifest divine love. I have spoken to you about love, but the essential I have not yet talked about. I am still in the introduction to love. If I were to pronounce the word love as it should be, can you imagine what would happen to you? You would become luminous, resplendent, and would put on angelic forms. Everything in the world is a manifestation of love. But what love is in reality, only few people know. It is the reality beyond the physical world. It is beyond your will, beyond your mind, beyond your heart. Love has merely points of contact with these. In the existing conditions, love acts intermittently, from without, until the human organism becomes adapted, because the body's present composition cannot withstand love's strong vibrations. Do not try to describe what love is, but describe its manifestations. Love is the only thing that man cannot describe. You cannot describe the bread until you have eaten it. You cannot describe the water until you have drunk it. From now on, people will come to know love. It is the greatest and most sentient power in the universe. When it permeates man, it brings the most sublime and beautiful manifestations of the Spirit. Love first becomes known to the great teachers, to the great adepts, to the great disciples, to the great believers, then to the great converts, and finally to the ordinary people. There is something greater than knowledge in the world. This is love. If you would like to come to the intrinsic purpose of things, to free yourselves from the constraints of life, you must love God. In reality, love is the path that leads to real knowledge. Do not concern yourselves with the love that enslaves people. It is of the world, and you have already experienced it. Divine love does not create contradictions in life. It will make you strong and full of spiritual power. It will make you steadfast in your thoughts. Divine love begins in the following way. A friend of yours comes to you and reads to you 2 stanzas that he has written. You should put yourself in his place and be as pleased for him as if you had written them yourself. Instead, you listen, and yet you are displeased and say to yourself, "Why did this not come from me?" Someone has painted a picture and shows it to you. Be pleased for him. Do not say, "Why did I not do this?" Someone has received an inheritance. Be pleased for him. Someone else has put on beautiful clothes. Be pleased for him as well. You need to consider your brethren's thoughts and feelings as your own, and let them be sacred to you. Yield to the love within yourself. This means to place God in the highest place within your soul. Your fundamental idea should be to love as God loves. If you enter into the divine world with your human love, you will attain nothing. One of the qualities of divine love is as follows. The one who has this love within cannot fall into temptation or enticement. No one can tempt the one within whose soul love dwells. He who has divine love is absolutely inviolable. Even the wild beasts know love, and when they meet love on their path, they step aside. When love descends from a higher realm into a lower, it creates suffering. When love transits from one realm into another, it creates suffering. He who understands this law will never become discouraged. When the disciple desires to attain the knowledge that love bears, he needs to shed his old clothing, that is to say, all the unnecessary suffering, and renounce his selfishness. Love is the primary prerequisite whereby man determines his own conditions. To love means to be in harmony with the divine world of love, with the angelic world of love, and with the human world of love, that is to say, with all good people. Man needs to know how to manifest divine love. It has thousands of ways to manifest. Man needs to know them all. From a letter by the Master. The flower that blossoms, the fruit that ripens, the light that makes the soul rejoice, and the spirit that gives all gifts for the heart and mind, are blessings that come down from God. Seek these always and learn from them. Above all things, love God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your will. Seek God alone. Serve him, and he will bless you. Grow and abide in love. He is coming. The Master would often give a new insight to those problems that concerned us, even if he had touched upon the subject at another time. He would approach this as a great musician might take up a simple melody and play it with a new harmony, unveiling a still fuller and deeper content as he interwove it with other melodies. In this way, the Master would summarize and highlight new relationships and correspondences, opening up an entirely new world that had been unknown to us until now. The Master would lead the conversation away from the trivial and mundane topics that people would often concern themselves with, and turn our thoughts toward the essential, that we might learn something new, that we might grow and develop. The Master told us, "To be born again," this is a reference to love who is now revealing itself in a new way. At present, man is just beginning to be born again in love. However, the time will come when we will dwell among those whom we love and who love us. Embrace love which is already coming into the world. It will make your heart rejoice. It will lead you to your beloved ones. You tell me, "Our hearts are full of sacred anticipation. They are in a stir, but your beloved ones have not yet come. Only now are they descending to earth. What you now perceive is merely their reflection, and for this reason you are feeling disappointed. Love is coming and will unite all beings into one as servants of God. Thousands of beings have worked in the material world, and in the invisible world as well, to bring about the favorable conditions that the Great One may come in the name of love. What is coming into the world now is so magnificent that all the angels peek down from heaven so that they may see what is coming and what is taking place on the earth. All of heaven, the whole of creation, is interested in this. The great day is coming into the world. The coming of the Great One is awaited with anticipation by all good and sentient beings. Those whose consciousness has awakened will perceive the great divine origin and be transformed. The remainder, those whose consciousness has not yet awakened, will continue to sleep. If you miss the great wave of love which is now coming, you will need to wait millions of years for the next one. In order for this great love to be revealed to you, you must pass through the law of self-sacrifice and renunciation. This wave of love will transform the adversity of the past into fertile soil, so that the flowers may blossom and the fruit of love may ripen. All of humankind will be sustained by them. Humankind is presently passing through a new phase of its development. A new form of love is coming. We ask, when will God come and reveal His love to us? This day is coming. For some, this day has already come. Have you ever raised silkworms? Do all form their cocoon in a single day? No, some do it sooner, some do it later. For some of the silkworms, this day has already come. Through love, all accounts between people will be reconciled. Someone owes you 1,000 leva. You need to close this account. Tell the person who is indebted to you, "So much did I torment you for these 1,000 leva, then give him an additional 1,000 leva." When you give him the 1,000 leva, ask him for forgiveness for having tormented him. Let the one who holds some claim against another give instead. This teaching is not intended for those who cling to the old ideas. Without love, man cannot leave behind his old ways. Let us all repeat the following formula: from not loving toward love, from mortality toward life, from the bad toward good, from doubt toward faith. Herein lies the meaning of life. The second law. The sermons and lectures of the Master are dedicated to the three great laws of the Great Brotherhood of Light. 1. Love God. 2. Love your neighbor. 3. Seek perfection. The Master told us, "A nation that preserves these 7 sacred words has a future. If it loses them, it has no future. These are the fundamental laws of life. The Master has given considerable knowledge related to them. In the following conversation, he gives explanations concerning the second law, love your neighbor. The Master said, "Whatever man's relationship to God is, such will be his relationship to all people. Once his faith in God is weakened, the possibility exists that his faith in his neighbor, and in himself as well, will become weakened. It is not possible for you to have a right relationship with anyone as long as you lack a connection with God. The love for God is like a venous flow, by which the impure blood goes to the heart and lungs to be purified, to become arterial. The venous and arterial flow of the blood not only exist with the body, but with human thoughts and emotions as well. For example, hatred and jealousy are the venous blood in man, whereas love and joy, the arterial. When one has love for God, one transforms the flow of the negative forces into positive, and the impure blood becomes pure. After that, it flows as arterial blood throughout the whole body to nourish all the cells. I am speaking symbolically. This is love for one's neighbor. This means that when you come to love God, you enter into his heart to become purified. So purified, you go out and properly transport the blood, that is to say, his blessings toward your neighbor. The love for one's neighbor is included within the love for God, but not vice versa. Many have love for others, but become easily disappointed by this love. Why? An essential element is missing. That is to say, when people love their neighbors, they need to love the divine within them. The one who has only loved his neighbor has attained nothing. Without God, the love for one's neighbor contributes nothing. Imagine that you fall in love with the finger of God. If you want to see God, you should not fall in love with his finger alone. When people perceive themselves as beings within whom God abides, they will then have right relationships. To come to know my neighbor, this means that I know that the same God whom I love dwells within my neighbor. When you meet someone, say, "Lord, I thank you that I have encountered you in this person." Everyone that you meet is an assignment, because you are to love the divine within him. Everyone who is God's creation deserves to be loved. God's law works in the following way. Behave toward others as you behave toward yourself. And yet, the perfect act is to relate to others in the way that God relates to you. That is to say, hold them within your mind, just as God is holding them within his mind. The least being occupies a high place within God's mind. Therefore, my relationship with others needs to be as good as God's relationship is to them. We cannot be like him, but let's walk on his path. Your love for your neighbor creates the conditions for the fruits in the garden of not only your own soul, but also in the soul of the one you love, to bloom and ripen. When we have love for God, we are receiving. God is then helping us. The supreme beings are helping us. When we have love for our neighbor, we are giving. Laws of the material life and the spiritual life. One brother asked, "Master, what can you tell us about this great unrest in the world at present?" The Master replied, "A person will become depleted and exhausted if he uses too much of his energy for the worldly life. The contemporary era is very active externally. Here, time is money. Man should allot his time in such a way that 1/3 is set aside for activity in the worldly life, and the rest for satisfying the needs of the mind, the heart, and the soul. How can we rid ourselves of the negative states? The third Hermetic law states, everything in the cosmos has its own vibration. One needs to understand that good, sublime thoughts have a higher vibration than the inferior negative ones. This is a law that you can make use of. For example, should you find yourself in a negative state, increase your frequency of vibration and you will eliminate it, because the more powerful vibrations of the sublime thoughts will prevail over the negative state and replace it. Should someone desire to be virtuous, he needs to connect with those who are already virtuous. For one to become a person of science, he needs to connect with learned people. This is the law. Anyone who believes that this can be accomplished in any other way has deluded himself. If you were to place a herdsman to dwell among people who are scholarly, he would begin to be like them. Conversely, if you were to place a sage to dwell over the course of many years among criminals, nothing would become of him. How can one learn from the past? Everything in the physical world is recorded. Should a being from the invisible world aspire to learn about something in the physical world, about certain epochs, he views the recorded visual image. In the future, man will be able to study the past in this manner. Is it possible to increase the capabilities of one's mind? For this, hard work is required. Man needs to subdue his lower nature, that he may be capable of receiving nature's fine and sensitive vibrations. When an atom passes through the human body, does it experience any change? Yes, a hydrogen atom that has passed through an animal or a human being differs from another one that has not. What is the relationship of the invisible world to the material one? There are laws that relate to the descent of the worlds into matter. Symbolically, the astral world represents water, and thus it is named the watery world. The astral world will descend and become like water, intangible. Why does the mind become weak? This is the result of the accumulation of old ideas within the mind. For example, people are overly concerned with how they will manage their lives. These are old ideas that come from their ancestors. When the balance between thought and emotion is disrupted, this weakens the mind. When someone seeks to express himself, do not restrain him in this. Instead, direct his attention toward something else, toward the sublime. Should you restrain him, those forces that are seeking expression would be passed on to you. Conduct the following experiment. Should you attempt to restrain someone's jealousy by trying to change him, the jealousy will find expression in you. Why are Caucasians anxious today? Because of the transgressions that they have committed. Man becomes anxious when he does not live rightly. How do man's actions affect the life of all humankind? The law states, whatever happens to the greatest will happen to the least as well. And conversely, what happens to the least will also happen to the greatest. For example, when you give a person 1 lev, another person should give someone else 10 leva. A third one, in turn, should give 100 leva to someone else. A fourth one, 1,000 leva, and so on. Everything that you do has an effect on the entire world. What we have done with the wellsprings will affect the events in the world. Whatever you do, thousands of people may do as well. When you turn a key, how can you be certain that thousands will not follow you? And if thousands turn their keys, that millions will not follow them? Human beings are like interconnected channels. Therefore, whenever someone works to improve himself, he works to improve others as well. This law has another application. Whatever one does in his worldly existence affects his inner life as well. For example, when we work to clean up a wellspring or a path or the countryside, this will produce a corresponding effect upon the state of our thoughts and emotions. In accordance with this law, man is held culpable before mankind for all of his actions. The severity of his transgression is of no significance. The least transgression can produce the same consequences as a big transgression, because man is interconnected with a multitude of people. When you transgress, you provoke others to transgress as well. You are the fire starter in a box of matches, and when you ignite, the remainder of the matches will start to burn as well. Does a person leave his influence upon the place he departed from? There are times when you pass through a place and experience elation. This is because a person who has been in an elated state has departed from there. You pass through another place, and now you experience sorrow, because a person in a sorrowful state has departed from there. Certain places exist where crimes have been committed. These leave behind a lasting influence that is felt for many years to come. Every object that has passed through your hands has received a certain influence from you, as your nature has become imprinted upon it. Should a person who is receptive touch this object, he will be able to describe, through imagery, your nature and your existence as well. You lead a virtuous life. Should an object that you have used pass into the hands of another, the impulse will arise in him, whether it be strong or weak, to live as you do. A consequence of the above law is the following precept. The water you have used to wash your face, discard on the flowers, vegetables, trees, but not on places where people walk or in impure places. If you abide by this rule, you will experience a slight improvement in your existence. The gifts of love. There are days when nature is in resurgence, bringing a feeling of renewal and inspiration to all. This morning we all went with the Master to a meadow above the woods. On the horizon, the snow-covered peaks of the Rila Mountains were visible. The shrubs around us were opening their leaves, and below us, the fields that had been sown were turning green. Springtime was in its full glory. Here it was, among the rocks, that we camped. We lit a fire and placed our constant companion, the red tea kettle, upon it. The Master sat down next to a big round stone and opened his traveling altimeter to check the altitude. It was 1,800 meters. Before long, the sisters were serving tea, and we had our breakfast in the all-encompassing silence. The mountain world spoke in its voiceless, beautiful language. The conversation began gradually. The Master said, "You are hungry. You want to satisfy your hunger. You are thirsty. You want to satisfy your thirst. Love is such a thing. When it comes into your heart, it will awaken within you the desire for work. What does love represent? It is the door through which one goes to God. Hatred is also a door, but through it, one departs from the presence of God. If you cannot enter into God's presence in this world, it will be impossible for you to do it in the other world. Only love can reveal to you what is sublime and noble. It is sufficient for one to take in a single, minute particle of love for him to feel an uplift within his spirit. Within love there is light, joy, expansion, life, favorable conditions for growth, and the opportunity to partake of all blessings. Love shares even the smallest of crumbs. Wherever love is not present, there suffering and death exist. If you have love for the immortal, you will become immortal. Whenever you love, you gain something. Love brings consolation. If you seek consolation, apply love. When love comes to a poor man, he becomes wealthy. Within love, you expand and rise upward. Without love, you diminish and descend. With love, no one falls. The one who loves ascends. All people are uplifted through these three principles: love, wisdom, and truth. In this, there is no exception. Throughout the entire history of creation, not one human being has lived who can say that he has uplifted himself in any other way. What is love? That which always succeeds. What is hatred? That which always fails. If someone loves me, he benefits. If I love someone, I benefit. Why is it that you cannot attain your desires? Because you have not come to know love in its fullness. When one has love, everything else is easily attained. Health is due to love. The absence of love has never contributed to anything. It is power taken away from love and used in a different way. This absence of love will cause us to lose our strength, grow tired, and develop a need for rest. The need for rest indicates that we need to apply love so that we may draw energy from it. When love is speaking to you, you have everything. There is no greater suffering than when love ceases to speak to you. When love does not speak to us, the reason for this is our lack of understanding. When love comes, everything will become attainable. When love goes away, everything will become unattainable. When the sun rises, everything becomes clear. When it sets, everything becomes unclear. In the presence of love, you should make use of the smallest gifts of love. Do not ask for the greatest gifts. The hardest thing is to love, and yet it is the easiest as well. There is nothing easier and more difficult at the same time than this. Someone says, "It is easy to apply love." For the one who has knowledge, it is easy, but for the one who has no knowledge, it is difficult. People who apply love have everything in abundance. It is a wondrous power. As soon as one encounters divine love, he connects with abundance and shares it with his fellow men. In human love, everything perishes. The only thing that gives of itself is love. All that we have is due to love. What is always giving, always flowing, and never ceases to flow, this is love. Love says, "I take away everything, and I give everything." For you to come to understand love, you need to give. In the manifested, revealed, and realized love of God, the good sprouts, Justice grows, truth blossoms, and wisdom bears fruit. Wisdom and truth cannot be understood without love. Love is what gives impulse to positive ideas. Love does not concern itself with the external forms alone. For as long as you only concern yourselves with the external forms, you are in the physical world. When you begin to concern yourselves with the content, you are in the spiritual world. And when you concern yourselves with the meaning, you are in the divine world. You can clearly perceive someone only if you love him. Only the one who loves can see. The one who does not love sees as if in a fog. He does not really see, and he does not understand. When you go before love, you should renounce all that is familiar to you. You should not elaborate upon your hardships. It is better to keep silent. Love does not want to be told about the past. Neither does love want to know about the future. Every open door speaks about one's understanding of love. Every closed door speaks about one's misunderstanding of love. It is said about someone, "His heart is closed." Do not attempt to knock on closed hearts. Someone wishes to be wealthy, famous, powerful. These are closed hearts. These things have nothing to do with love. Someone thinks that if he dresses well or possesses considerable knowledge, he will be loved. Knowledge is only love's servant. Knowledge, least of all, is able to bring you to love. It is merely a vehicle of love. You love someone, yet he is only one word in love's language. All people are love's words. And yet, because people here on earth are not good, they cease to be words of love's language. As a result, contradictions arise. Of all divine acts, love is the most free. When one speaks about divine love, courage is required. What is the purpose of love? To teach man to live rightly. Special days of love exist, about which only the advanced beings know. You should love without being carried away by it. I would like to convey to you the state of that being who is filled with love and alive with his faith in God. What beautiful garments such a being is wearing! There is nothing more beautiful than finding the one within whose heart the love of God abides. This has the significance of finding a precious stone or a wellspring. This is the image that you should have about love. If you go into a desert with divine love, it will transform it into a garden. Love is the strongest force of all, and is a power as well. No single external power can oppose love. The angels bow down before love. When it speaks through a person, he becomes strong and powerful. Powerful is the one who has love. You can accomplish nothing if love does not work through you. Without love, there is no power, no health, no life. Depending upon the strength of someone's love, I will know how long a person will remain with me. When someone loves, he stays longer. Love is springtime. Not loving is winter. Not loving can be compared to sunset, and love to sunrise. Love is a fire that no man can extinguish. Once you are kindled by the fire of love, you will be a fire for all eternity. All previous bonds will disappear. There is one alone that will not disappear, the bond of love. Where there is love, everything will come to pass. Where there is no love, everything will be destroyed. Man needs to dwell in love in the same way that he dwells in the light and the air. A person of love cannot be tempted, nor is he a temptation for others. When the weak one stands in the way of love's path, love goes around him in order not to run him over. For all those who do not know love, God has special ways to educate and transform them. If a tree comes to love you, it will bear sweeter fruit. When you go to a wellspring that loves you, it will begin to gush and flow more powerfully. Should it not love you, the surging of the water will diminish. If someone's hand comes to love you, is it the hand itself that loves you? Behind the wellspring, there is a sentient being who loves you. The world suffers because of the scant love, but is blissful because of the abundant one. The meaning of life lies in man's eternal striving toward love. The still small voice. In the calm, warm nights, we gathered around our beloved master under the big trees in the garden. We were singing and talking. We will never forget those evenings. The day would come to its end. The bright colors would fade, and the forms would disappear as another reality emerged before our gaze. The Master spoke. From inside the invisible world, or from the depths of creation, God secretly works within the minds and hearts of human souls. He works within every cell and removes every groan and lament in the world. One day, He will set everything right and in order. He says, "Be not afraid. Wait. Be patient. In a while, the pain will cease. You are hungry," He says to you. "Soon you will have bread." There is no state more beautiful than God's presence within the depths of your soul. You are ill. From within, God says to you, "Be not afraid. Soon you will be healthy." And truly, you become well. Your affairs are in disarray. God says to you, "Do not worry, things will work out." And they do. On the worst days of your life, He says to you, "Do not worry, everything will be all right." The water that was taken from the wellspring today is of greater consequence than the water that was taken in the past. The word that God speaks to us now is also of greater consequence. In the past, the mother spoke to her child in one way. Now that the child has grown, she speaks to him differently. And yet, there is no contradiction between the mother speaking to the small child and the grown one. Who is He that is pushing us toward the sublime, toward the noble? God is the divine within us. This still small voice that speaks within us is God. He speaks within all people. Someone does not want to surrender. The still small voice whispers, "Surrender, submit." Sometimes this small voice tells you, "What you did is not right." You are glad, joyful. This is because God is speaking to you. God tells you, "I am sorry that you committed this transgression. You did not act rightly." God speaks to all. All hear God's voice speaking to them. When God speaks to someone, even if He tells them only one word, this is worth more than anything he has ever possessed. Only God teaches man. I desire that God would tell you one word every day. It is important for one to be conscious of that moment when God speaks to him. He will say only one word. If you do not seize it, you will lose everything. When God speaks to people, most of them are sleeping. When the angels speak to them, again, they are asleep. Suffering develops man's hearing that he may perceive the most tender vibration of God's voice. You have come to earth to learn the art of listening to the voice of God. Only now does life begin for you. Listen to that still voice that speaks to your hearts. This is the voice of God. On the earth, there is not one human being to whom this voice does not speak. If you apply love, the angels will begin to visit you daily and bring you a love letter that has been sent by your great Father. When the Great One begins to speak to man, light will appear within his mind, and within his heart, an expansion. He comes to love all people, all things, all flowers, trees, and birds. Everything is beautiful. Listen to what God is telling you now. Be glad for what God has told you in the past. We erroneously think that God has spoken in the past, but not in the present. This is not true. God speaks to us today as well, but when you err, you cannot hear God's voice clearly, and you start to doubt, to hesitate. God speaks to all beings. He speaks to them continuously. Everything that man does, what he thinks, feels, acts upon, is reflected within the divine consciousness. Then and there, God speaks to man. In this way, the human consciousness is always being reflected within the divine consciousness. It is the latter that speaks to man. This means that the divine consciousness is reflected within the human consciousness as well. The unknown love. Someone had left a big, beautiful apple on the master's table. The master looked at the fruit, smiled, and said, "An angel comes, brings you a gift, or helps you, and leaves. You do not know his name. You, too, should act in this way. Love does not have much time to explain to you who it is or tell you its name. Love is very busy, and for this reason, it leaves you a gift and departs. Love without having people know about it, and this will be beneficial for you as well. He who gives love does not need to speak about his love, and he who receives love should not speak about it either. If someone loves, this should be his secret. Nobody else should know about it. Sometimes you have the desire to explain to people how love has revealed itself to you. Do not do that. Love does not want you to share with others whatever it has revealed to you. If there is a need, love will tell them itself. Jacob's weakness was not his love for his son Joseph, but that he showed his love for him in the presence of his other sons. They did not need to know about it. This was his mistake. Sublime love is selfless. You should love someone without his knowing about it. Otherwise, love will lose its quality of selflessness. In this lies the difference between divine love and human love. It is difficult to observe the law of unknown love. This is attainable only by the advanced beings. Those who can keep this law are the minority. When you love, be glad that you are fulfilling God's will. The law is as follows. If you say that you love, you will lose your love. You will lose what you cherish. Love conceals itself. Love will not allow itself to be defiled. When you love, do not speak about this. As soon as you tell someone that you love him, immediately a conflict will follow. Keep the following precept. You cannot be truly happy as long as you do not love with the unconditional love. I do not want you to merely believe this. If you would like, test this out for 1 year. Love without anyone's knowledge. Thus, you will verify this truth. Be wellsprings that water may flow out of you in abundance and quench the thirst of human souls. Do so without their knowledge. The conditions for attaining real knowledge. During a talk, the Master said, knowledge and freedom are given according to the intensity of one's love. Only he who has attained love in its fullness is able to possess real knowledge. When you unite with love, you will receive divine light. When love visits you, you will come to possess the knowledge of real science as well. The mind should look through the eyes of love. Do not deceive yourselves into thinking that you can be powerful without love. Someone says, even without love, I can accomplish my desires. You can accomplish nothing. Search throughout history for at least one great reformer or one great teacher who has achieved his goal without love. He might have some success temporarily, but all this will be destroyed, and no mention of him will remain. Power manifested without love is sentenced for destruction. If you love, your faith will grow stronger. If you love, you might become a poet, an artist, a musician, a scientist, anything that you desire. The conditions for growth and development are hidden within love. Love develops the gifts within man. It gives vision. To be able to see into the spiritual world, one should be filled with love. Should you manifest even the smallest love, the first indication which tells you that you have the blessing of the divine will be the revelation of something great. Should a person manifest the smallest divine love, a curtain would be lifted from his view in an instant, and the sublime beings who dwell in the realm of love would become visible to him. They would smile at him and say, "Walk on this path. This is the path on which we walk." After that, the curtain would fall again. Can you become discouraged if every day the curtain lifts and you see what gives life and meaning to all things? Divine Poetry. We were gathered around our beloved Master. Some of the brothers and sisters read works of Bulgarian poets and foreign poets as well. A discussion of poetry began. The Master said, art should have two related qualities. Primarily, it is necessary for art to present a model, an ideal, to which man may aspire. Art should represent what is sublime in life, so that it may awaken in man the aspiration to come to know God. Secondly, a sublime idea should become incarnate in the representation, and in such a way that this eternal divine idea will be born within the consciousness of the one who contemplates on the representation, becoming alive within him. In this way, art is able to connect man with the divine and with the eternal ideas. Poetry should be so sublime that a person who is discouraged will, upon reading this poetry, forget about his suffering and attain new insights. The poet or the writer needs to align his creative energy with that of a sentient nature, that he may write well. Only sentient nature is capable of inspiring man toward the great and sublime in life. The poet, whose forehead is broad in the upper part, possesses imagination. This broadness of the forehead will be lacking in the one who writes mediocre poetry. Poetry will indicate the level of consciousness a culture has attained at the time of the writing of the poetry. According to me, the genuine poet or writer is the one who, even if he might have written only a single word, has done the writing with his heart's blood. This single word is a manifestation of his core essence. Whatever you write about should first be experienced. Every poet, musician, and artist is the collective manifestation of many souls. That a poet may begin to manifest his greatness, thousands of very gifted souls need to come together to manifest through him. Whenever a person writes, many advanced beings come to assist him. They rejoice over each word that comes out of his pen. Sometimes when a poet is writing, beings from the higher worlds come down and dictate to him. The hand of every poet who writes libelous and defamatory verse will wither. However, the hand of every poet who writes sacred verse will be blessed. Consider a poet who has written something. If what he has written is fruitful, he will rejoice, not only for that moment, but for many years to come as well. If what he has written is malevolent and causes harm, he will suffer. Every poet knows to a certain degree when his works are read. You are a poet and you feel joyful. The reason for this is that you have written something good, and when it is read, you experience fulfillment. There are other times, however, that a poet has written something that is mediocre, and when it is read, he experiences distress. Only that one who aspired to become a poet while still in heaven will be a poet on earth. Every individual is destined to become a first-class poet at some point in time. Order, as well as other favorable conditions, exists in eternity that enable man to manifest. In the divine world, a law exists for this. However, you should wait for your time. You should not hasten. God has chosen the time for every being to manifest. One should wait for this moment for 1,000 or even 1,000,000 years. Your day will come when you will be told, "Come forth and manifest." All of the cosmos will then manifest through you. Are you ready for this moment? Each and every one of you should prepare himself for this great day. Tolstoy was a man of genius. He possessed an inner vision. In War and Peace, he stressed that it was not Napoleon, the individual, who made history on his own, but that other factors existed in sentient nature that were working through him. At the time when our Bulgarian poets were doing their writing, the sky was dark. There was even thunder. That is to say, the conditions under which they worked were unfavorable. For this reason, they have not written sacred works. In India, Tagore had a mystical and spiritual environment in which to work that made it possible for him to write such masterpieces. Tagore's father set aside a special time each day for meditation and contemplation. Tagore arose from bed before dawn each day to spend time in meditation. For this reason, he was able to write sacred masterpieces such as Gitanjali, The Gardener, and others. In the future, great poets will be born in Bulgaria. All that has been written so far is merely a prelude. Poetry and music are two fundamental elements of life. Music represents the external aspect of life, and poetry, the internal aspect. Receiving and giving. During a morning walk, the Master said, "Two laws exist by which human beings must abide, receiving and giving. Man receives and gives. Within nature, an interchange always needs to take place. You need to receive, and you need to give." We want to hold on to things for ourselves. Can you hold on to the air? You can merely inhale and exhale the air. In a manner similar to your inhaling and exhaling the air, so too you need to give after you have received. Inhalation represents receiving, whereas exhalation represents giving. If you do not exhale, you will not be able to receive the fresh air anew. Once having given, you have the possibility of receiving. Suffering occurs when one begins to receive more than he gives. Fruit trees give abundantly to people. Man needs to learn from the tree's generosity. Be generous, give abundantly. One needs to see himself as a mailman. When he is delivering letters, he is giving. You will be compensated for delivering letters as required. If you do not deliver them, you will be held responsible. You will be asked, "What have you done with the letters?" We are merely mailmen, because all things in the universe, light, air, water, clothes, all things come from God. Hold on to those divine blessings which come your way for a time, and then give them away. Only hold on to whatever you need. Relinquish the rest. Share it with others. Within nature, compliance to law exists. Should someone come to me when I have only one apple, I will tell myself, either I can eat it or he can, and so I will give the apple to him. A little while later, I meet another man who gives me 2 apples. Compliance to the laws of nature lies in this: what I think, feel, or do for others will come back to me as well. According to this law, you will receive as much as you have given. Trials in love. In each conversation, in each lecture, the Master gave us insight into the many sides of love. He unveiled before our eyes a beautiful and infinitely varied world, somehow familiar and intimate. Once, when we were gathered around the Master, he said, "Man's love is continuously tried, that he may better comprehend the breadth of the love within him." You assume that you love, but your love is not the kind that will improve your existence. Which kind of love is it? The ordinary human kind. You will pass through many trials to test which kind of love is yours. God tests you that he may try out your love. In like manner, he puts to test your mind as well. Love overcomes all suffering, whereas the mind overcomes all contradictions. When the love of modern man is put to the test, some will pass, but others will not. That person whose love, wisdom, and truth cannot be taken away, I consider to be a hero. Should a person regret that he has loved, his love was not genuine. The love that does not endure all trials is not genuine. It is only a mood, a feeling, a transient emotion. The one who denies love He leaves himself open for adversity to enter, and his existence will become full of sadness and sorrow. You are sorrowful because you have denied a loving feeling. You say, "I love." Your love needs to be tested. When the least thing is capable of offending you, this indicates that your love is not genuine. All of the experiences that a person endures are tests. When a person loses his moral stability, his love will vanish as well. There is an old legend that tells of a prophet who brought a new teaching to Persia. Many believed in this teaching. Once the prophet told them, "God has given me the commandment that you must sacrifice your life for him." Only a young couple who loved one another told him, "We are ready to sacrifice ourselves." In the prophet's tent, there was a ram. When the couple entered the tent, the prophet slaughtered the ram, and its blood poured out from the tent. Upon seeing this, all the others ran away, but the young couple passed their test. Love is often tested in a similar way. This test was given by the prophet, that he would know whose faith was genuine. Divine Justice. The work on our wellspring of good proceeded well. The Master himself participated in the work and supervised it. When he turned his attention to something, all gathered around him. Great attentiveness and thoroughness were applied to this work. The basin was enlarged. 3 granite steps were put in place along the path. A platform paved with stones was made, and a flume for the flowing water as well. There were workers all about and bystanders too. Some were coming while others were going. The Master was thoughtful, as if he were solving a difficult task. He worked like a mathematician dealing with number values, both known and unknown. Everything possessed significance: what kind of people were coming and when, where they would stand, what their part in the work would be, which initiatives and ideas might arise, and how they might be implemented. On this day, everything had a substance and meaning that had never been present before. Phenomena came together in accordance with strange and unfamiliar laws to form a whole, in the way that individual letters and words come together to form a sentence. These phenomena formed a dynamic and mystical language that was known only to the Master. The sentient world took part in our work, as these were the most difficult and fateful days for the Bulgarian people and all of humankind as well. When the work was completed, the Master evaluated everything once again and saw that it was done well. Afterward, we gathered around the Master, and he began to speak about the law of justice. Justice should be applied to the human existence, justice in respect to the resources that have been provided. If there needs to be a religion, it should be a religion of love. If there needs to be a public social system, it should be a system of justice. There exists today a new direction in the universe for all. The outmoded precepts need to be replaced with new ones. New precepts are required. One of the new precepts states, "Love others as you would like to be loved." Every person should know that the good he desires for himself should be good for others as well. According to Mosaic law, the social problem of integrity is resolved as follows. Whatever man receives over the course of 49 years, he must give back on the 50th year. In that year, everyone will become equal again. The 50th year becomes a jubilee year. All rejoice when it comes, and all give back to his brother what has been taken from him. 45 jubilee years have passed to date without being celebrated. Now 45 jubilee years should come one after the other, that justice, the equitable distribution of resources, can be restored. Because 2,500 years have passed without the jubilee years being celebrated, These 45 Jubilee years will be celebrated together. This is the end of times. The end of times began in 1914. During the 45 years that come after, all should give back everything that he has taken to everyone that he has taken from. According to the Mosaic law, a person that has been a slave will become a free man after 49 years, and the man who has dominion over land received from another must give it back after 49 years to the one from whom he has taken it. If the people who govern do not equitably resolve all issues in dispute among nations, the world will experience cataclysmic change in the years to follow. Over the course of 45 years, people will need to become free of everything belonging to others in order to balance the old accounts. Everything and everyone created by God and set on the earth is entitled to an equitable life. No one may take away this entitlement. The great omniscient cause regards all people equally. Oppression is intolerable to God. God is patient, and yet retribution will ultimately come. No one can take away the bounties that have been given to you. Should they be taken away from you, sooner or later they will be given back to you. Every human being is born with certain divine rights. No one has the right to take away the divine rights that have been given to you. I am referring to those rights that God has given to you. This is the new consciousness that is awakening. All should honor the entitlements of all peoples. You have a book that, although it be plain on the outside, you love it because of its content. In the same way, one should honor the divine that is imparted to all human beings, all animals, and all plants. The law of justice requires this. From this point of view, if someone commits a transgression, do not say that he is bad, because you will put into discord the law of justice, that is to say, the honor you owe to every living being. This person is like the fruit that is in the process of ripening. He has not ripened yet, but he will. In order to act in accordance with the law of justice, we should regard one another with a sacred mindfulness. Justice defines the relationship among people. The good is what benefits all and not just one. Justice requires that everyone should benefit from God's bounties. To desire, to receive, and hold these resources for ourselves, this is not right. We should distribute them to all others as well. Children grow, and their expenses grow comparable to their growth. In their first year, the expenses are few. In the second, they will be greater, and so on. The same is also true for nations. They also grow, and their food supply, shelter, and clothing need to increase as well. The resources provided by nature should be available to all, which means that all should be able to benefit from them. Love in the future will be dramatically different from love in the present. The new kind of love will be characterized by the following. What is good for one will also be good for all. Abundance has always been sent from the invisible world. We live in a world of abundance. There is sufficient food, clothing, and everything else, but these are not properly distributed. If people lived rightly, there would be enough for all. Their error is in the desire of some to possess more resources than is their due. Everyone should possess only as much as is needed. In the human order, phenomena are not structured. In the divine order, there is abundance, but not excess. There is no need for one to make provisions for the future. The wealthy and the poor alike are provided for, so they may be assured of having air and light. They are not deprived of water either. Who can deprive a human being of water that flows from the mountain? Man's great delusion comes from his unwillingness to subject himself to the divine order that is implanted within him. Man desires to build his own system in order to impose his own laws. The laws of men are useless. We do not need to teach the stomach how to digest food. It knows how to do its job. Man needs only to chew his food well. The same is also true for the heart. If you interfere with its action, you will disturb its normal functioning. Divine laws exist for this, but we need to apply them. To give to all according to their needs, this is the requirement of the divine law of justice. Less is required for the small child, more for the adult. Equity does not refer to equal distribution, but to the right distribution of conditions and entitlements according to one's level of development. We desire wealth. This is a misunderstanding. Everyone needs to work. All may receive as much as they need from the wellspring, but none may draw more water than they need. The accumulation of resources is not tolerated. The law states, all may receive as much as they can carry. One night, a wealthy man had the following dream. He came upon a wagon loaded with gold that was led by 3 pair of white buffalo, and everyone received some of the gold. This man carried a large trunk and asked to have it filled with gold. He was told that everyone could receive as much as he could carry on his back, and so they strapped the trunk to his back and started to fill it with 1 shovelful, 2 shovels, 3, and he would always say, "More, more." Eventually, the trunk became so heavy that the wealthy man could no longer move and suffocated from its weight. Upon awakening from his dream, he realized that his wealth was greater than his need, and so he began to share it with others. You pass by a tree. You are entitled to pick some fruits and eat them. You go on a journey. If there is a wellspring every 5 to 10 kilometers, do you need to carry a canteen with water? Justice is the essential law that is responsible for the distribution of divine resources through all sectors of society. In order for peace to exist in a country, there must be equity among the people, without exception. The wealthy man is afraid of being robbed. The poor one is afraid of dying from hunger. Let the wealthy man give half of his wealth to the poor man. The resources are to be made available to all people. They need to be removed from those places where they are in abundance, that they may be distributed to those who have little or none. I meet a man who tells me, "My sack is empty. I do not know what to do. My children are dying of hunger." I meet another man with a full sack. He says, "My sack is heavy. I do not know how I will be able to carry it home." Let the one with the heavy sack call to the one with the empty sack and tell him, "Brother, both of us are facing death. Take half the contents of my sack, that both our conditions may improve." Someone says, "God has determined the fate of both the wealthy and the poor." I ask him, "Have you spoken with God?" He responds, "One of the prophets 3,000 years ago did." I ask him, "Have you spoken with the prophet?" The social problem of integrity must be resolved. The foundation of its resolution should come from the process of breathing. Resources should be distributed rightly in order that giving and receiving may be regulated. In this way, man can be alleviated of his constant concerns for food. When God made bread, he forbade its sale. A great curse hangs over humankind. Why? Because you sell bread, which is life's greatest bounty. It is absolutely forbidden to sell bread or flour. Bulgaria needs to become the first country to apply the divine law of the land. Bread should be given for free. Only the one who applies this law is pure and free from transgression. God tells us, "You are not entitled to sell or purchase the bounties that I have provided." This truth, to distribute bread free of charge, needs to now be applied on earth. It is not permissible to sell bread to your brothers. This is part of the resolution of the social problem. There is a law that states, the one who does not freely share his resources needs to eventually share them according to the law of coercion. This means that if you do not share them freely, they will be taken from you by force. A prominent, wealthy man walked along a road. A poor man saw him and told him, "Do not take this road, there is a precipice further on." The rich man only replied, "That is not of your concern." And so he continued to walk, and he fell into the precipice and started to call for help. The poor man came to his rescue, saying, "I warned you." After this, the rich man, who had fallen, came to his senses. This means that because he had this experience, he began to appreciate compassion. When we speak about divine order, we need to visualize a world of abundance. Wherever abundance exists, crimes are not committed. It will be no problem for me to give an abundance of water to all if I am standing by a lake. All divine order is an order of love, the love that bears abundance. All need to enter into the divine order that we may build a new way of life. Humility. The Master told us, when man is descending, that is to say, in involution, he is prideful, living with his memory of higher existence. When a person is ascending along the path of evolution, he has humility because he sees the heights to which he aspires and seeks to reach. The one who is prideful descends, whereas the one who has humility ascends. The one who is prideful descends, that he might explore the depths. Conversely, the one who has humility ascends, that he might explore the heights. When a prideful person descends, he will say, "How deep this well is," and yet, when the person with humility reaches the summit, he will say, "How high this summit is." Humility is the first condition for connecting with God. This is the law of the universal brotherhood of light. Humility is the primary quality required of the disciple. You should go before God not as a righteous or knowledgeable one, but as a humble one. When you feel that you have power, this is because many beings connect with you inwardly. However, when you believe that this power is your own, that you do everything by yourself, these beings will make no objection, but they will withdraw from you. You will then remain alone, so that you might comprehend how weak you are when you are on your own. Many people study and busy themselves in many ways, but they do not achieve success because they have many ambitions and seek prominence. You need to understand that humility is required by law for the preservation of one's life force. The one who has humility is able to accomplish good work with only a little energy. Humility is the root of the one real knowledge. Pride is the root of transient knowledge. You might possess considerable knowledge, but if you are prideful, you will be in the state of one who has been deluded by the forces of darkness. When you abide by divine law, even if you are the least evolved, you will ascend. Should a person desire for the divine forces to take an interest in him and bless him, he needs to have humility. In the sublime as well as the ordinary sense of the word, humility fosters all those divine virtues for which the human spirit and soul strive. Only the one who has humility can be spiritual. Only through love can you begin to comprehend humility. Through humility, man begins to realize that there are many high peaks. Only a great person, a saint, and a self-realized teacher have humility. They understand that even though they are evolved, nothing can be attained without the power of the sublime world. The one who has humility says, "Lord, let your will be done, not mine." The most sublime manifestation of humility is man's desire to fulfill the will of God. Happiness and eternal bliss. During a morning walk, the Master said, "Only when all people attain true happiness will we attain the utmost happiness. Until all have happiness, none will be fully happy." All search for personal happiness, but herein lies the misunderstanding. If the entire world is suffering and only one experiences happiness, I ask, does life have significance? The issue concerns whether the one who searches for personal happiness will find it. In other words, man finds happiness not by searching for it, but by being sought after. Seek not happiness in the present conditions. Everyone today searches for happiness outside of God. Herein lies their error. Do not search for happiness in another person. Seek it within the divine. A fundamental bond exists between your soul and God. Re-establish this bond, and all will work for your good. People of today desire happiness in life, but they do not understand its laws. Happiness includes the following elements: faith, wisdom, imagination, love. It includes also an understanding of the natural laws, those of solid, liquid, and gaseous matter, as well as those of light, electricity, and electromagnetism. Happiness is not the only way for man to resolve his life's tasks. Animals are capable of having a good life as well. They can be happy without ever having resolved the tasks of their lives. Do not search for happiness in the material, but seek for it in the eternal bliss. I speak of the great process toward perfection. Man did not come to earth for the purpose of achieving happiness, but to study. True happiness cannot be attained on earth in its present stage of development. It is for the future. Man should prepare the necessary conditions so that everlasting happiness may come in the future. Eternal bliss exists in that place where virtue dwells. Wherever virtue dwells, there we will find true happiness.